Hi, this is Dave Browne from Picturehouse, and you're listening to Concerts That Made Us.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, Concerts That Made Us. Interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us. Concertsthatmadeus.com.
On this episode, I'm chatting with Dave Browne from Picturehouse. When I was growing up in Ireland, Picturehouse were one of the most prominent bands on the scene. Their song Sunburst was the most played song on Irish radio in 1998, and they toured like it was nobody's business. They've played with the likes of Bon Jovi, the Corrs, Meatloaf, and Alice Cooper, to name a few. So you know there's going to be some great stories in this episode. They're also playing a gig in Liberty Hall Theatre in Dublin on the 22nd of September. So if you're in the area, make sure you get tickets and go out and support the guys. It's going to be a great show. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show.
There's a sunburst whenever you're near me. There's a sunburst trying to break through, and I'll wait, hopefully near you, hoping you are trying to get nearer to the sunburst, the one that I'm feeling, such a sunburst trying to break through, and I'll wait, hopefully near you, hoping you're maybe feeling it too. What a day, what a day, what a day. She gives me all I need. She's taking me over, breaking me open like a sunburst, rising and waking in her room. She's leading me through, but I'll wait, hopelessly dreaming, but knowing that dreaming is true.
Dave Browne, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thanks very much for having me. Thanks a million.
I'm delighted. I am absolutely delighted now. I remember growing up in the 90s, not to make you feel old or anything now, but I remember growing up in the 90s. You couldn't listen to the radio without hearing you guys. And you were hugely successful. I mean, you toured with Bon Jovi, Meatloaf, the Corrs. You even count Elton John as a fan. He bought a box of your CDs to give out to friends and family. I mean,
Yeah.
you seem to have done it all.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had a great time. And it's like I do listen to a lot of podcasts now, and one thing that seems to be quite across the board is that people don't really realize at the time that things are happening. So we were just working. Yeah, don't get me wrong, we were having a great time. We were enjoying ourselves and playing and writing, but when you're in the thick of all of that work and you're just going from one tour to another, it's put it this way, if it happened again now, I think we'd all be looking around a lot more.
I'd say so. I'd
Yeah.
say so. So one thing I love to do is I love to start at the very beginning and see how your story started and how you got to where you are today. So if you can now, can you remember your very first musical memory?
Yeah, I can indeed. Yeah. Well, I mean, apart from playing at home to myself and writing all the time, and very very basic stuff now when I was a kid. But my first gig, I think, was when I was 15 in the local school hall, as it were, the community centre, and there was a kind of a battle, not a battle of the bands, but a summer festival kind of thing, just for the locals and all. And that was the first time I stood up and played one of my own songs ever.
Jeez.
Yeah.
What
Nerve
was it?
wracking.
I was just going to say it must have been pretty nerve-wracking being the first.
Yeah, yeah. But you got to start somewhere. And that's the first memory anyway. Definitely, I remember it well. Remember it like it was yesterday.
And when it comes to concerts, would you say going to see Meatloaf with your mother was kind of your musical awakening?
Well, it was very sentient, interesting moment because I said to my mum, I'm going to be up there with him someday. It wasn't just I'll be up there because I kind of knew that anyway. That's where I was going. But with him, I'm actually going to play with Meatloaf someday, and for that to actually happen, and to end up sitting on the stage with him singing one of his songs, I mean, I think you've more chances of winning the lotto than that actually happening.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
very for such an obscure thing to actually
Yeah,
happen. So yeah, it was
yeah, it's
great. It
like
was a
something
real, real
straight out of a
fun.
movie.
Yeah, yeah, or out of an upcoming documentary. You never know.
Well, yeah, yeah. And in your house growing up, then was it a very musical house? Was music always being played?
Yeah, yeah, all the time. I remember one of my earliest memories of how music affected me emotionally was "Honey Come Back" by Glenn Campbell. And we had Glenn Campbell's greatest hits in the house, which years later when you turn around, like Jimmy Webb wrote all those songs and the whole story about him and Glenn, how they got together. It's fat, I was just so happy that that was the music in which my household was made up of. But Honey Come Back, yeah, where he just, it's a country western song and it's playing away, and then he starts talking in the verse, I know you used to love me, honey, and all this, and I started bawling because I just felt my heart broke for the guys. It's like, oh, this is unbelievable. And I remember my mother coming into the room saying, are you all right, son? As a concerned parent would be, why are you crying? Is everything all right? And I was just like, it was only years later I realized the song had just touched me. That's what happened. I just got, the emotion was from the song and how my heart went out to the character in the song. So.
It's the power of music, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely, it is. Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So I've always had an affiliation with music that way, and in the house there was always great, Elvis and Neil Diamond, and it's all good music. It was all really good music. But the Wombles, I had the Wombles album, We Wish You a Wumbling Merry Christmas and all this. And then you kind of figure out years later that Mike Batt wrote all of those songs, and the recording process was like the Beatles loved him. Everybody loved him, Mike Batt, because the songs were so clever,
Mm.
and well written. And how they were recorded by real band. Like, it was like, I know they were Wombles in suits, but Mike Batt, the guy who wrote and produced all that stuff, was a bona fide genius. The stuff was amazing. So it's only years later you look back and kind of think, and then when you kind of think, God, it was good music to have around. Certainly.
Yeah. Set up a brilliant foundation for you anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's where the pop element of it came from, Brian. You know what I mean? We want to have a song that has to deliver in 3 minutes, and do what it says on the tin. So we were never afraid of that, as you know. And some would say that to our detriment, you know, that's why you don't get taken seriously. I mean, one of the famous reviews from Hot Press, where he came to the gig in the Olympia and called our fans overzealous, had to go with the fans because they were having too much fun. You know, it's kind of.
Oh man.
So anyway, we never really cared about that. We just wanted to be in the radio, and hence your first question there. That's why we were on the radio all the time. That's all we were interested in doing.
Yeah. And just before Picturehouse, you had a band called Hidden Faces. What
That's
was
right.
your experience with that?
Again, looking back on it, it was an amazing time. It wasn't at the time, you know, because we were kids and you all have your issues and you're in your teens and there's all this kind of crap going on. You know, there's all that in bands. But, you know, listening back to the music now and the things we achieved, you know, we had cassettes with 10 songs on them, 5 on each side. And, you know, we made our own cassettes and wrote our own music, and it was full of passion and angst and, you know, all of that, which, so I'm very, very proud of it now when I look back at it. But again, at the time, I'm sure, you know, I was more concerned with whose girlfriend was who at the time.
Yeah. Oh man. And how did that turn into Picturehouse then?
They threw me out of my own band.
Really?
Yeah, they fired the lead singer, which is always a good move in the music business. So I just went, okay, fair enough. And I set up Picturehouse the next week, and off we went, different band.
Yeah, I think it was sort of I'll show these guys. So
yeah. Thanks for the energy, guys. I needed that, you know. Asher, look, there's Johnny Boyle was in the band in Hidden Faces. You know, it's all just the same. As I said, a lot of juvenile kiddie stuff going on, you know. But that's what happened. So I moved on to Picturehouse, and it was a lovely man, Roddy Hickson, Lord rest him. He had the demo that I'd made, and he sent it into somebody to review it or whatever it was. But he said, I put that name Picturehouse on it. And I said, oh, really? Why is that? Well, you know, when I listen to your music, I see pictures. You know, it's very image driven, and then house is very inward at the moment. So it's like, okay, Roddy, thanks, man. I'll take that. That'll do. So that's the truth about where that came from. Yeah.
So that's not one I've heard before. Now it's actually a good way of coming up with the name.
Yeah, well, that's what happened, you know. Yeah, and you know, you tend to think there's a huge big game plan, grand plan with bands, where a lot of it's serendipitous and lucky, and you know, just things that happen, good and bad.
Yeah. Now, in the early days, you guys had an unbelievable drive to succeed, and you toured and gigged like hell around Ireland. What was the scene like in those days coming up?
Gosh, you know, and I know I sound like a broken record here, Brian, but you know, you're looking back on it and you're thinking now, God, it was actually really quite good. You know, you could Heineken roller coaster tours were packed, and you know, really successful things that went on that I don't really see now. I think the scene was more geared towards bands coming through, and you know, the live scene. Now, having said that, I'm not in that world at the moment, so I don't know. Maybe there are lots of up and coming bands touring all over the place and still packing venues up and down the country. I don't know, but at the time, the scene was fairly vibrant. Yeah, it was fairly vibrant. You never made any money as usual, but it was vibrant anyhow.
I think nowadays I seem to notice anyway is, I don't know what it was like back then, but now there seems to be like a massive divide. You know, you're either the lower bands that are going around playing gigs, or you're the bigger bands that are playing festivals and everything. And it just seems like it's impossible to merge or make the jump, you know?
Yeah, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. I'm working with a new organisation at the moment that we've set up, Ceol Éireann, which is Music Ireland, which we've set up to kind of deal with all of that. You know, as an Indigenous business in Ireland, we're not like the Fish Board or the Film Board or Tourism Ireland, where we kind of say, well, we have music and we're world beaters at it, and we could be making a lot of money for our exchequer exporting this product if we manufacture it properly. And so in that lies that problem, that same thing, that middle tier. You know, and I'm not sure what, you know, the appetite is amongst that age group of going out to see up and coming bands. I'm not sure whether that's a thing anymore. You know, it possibly isn't. You know, if you're not on TikTok, you don't have a huge presence. Maybe you can't connect with your audience in that you know, organic way that we used to. Again, I could stand to be corrected on that. I'm not sure, but maybe that's part of the problem too. But I don't know when the last time I saw a band that kind of wrote a song, got in the Late Late Show, got on the radio, did their own thing. And, I can't remember the last time that's happened. An organically grown band here in Ireland.
No, actually, no. I think
You know,
it's kind of a thing of record labels nowadays take a step back and say, how are they doing on TikTok? How are they doing
yeah,
on
yeah, yeah,
Instagram?
yeah. Come to see us when you're already famous.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's why, again, I think there should be an apparatus in Ireland that can facilitate artists like that. I mean, I know it's not like going and pressing CDs and putting them in the record shops and any of that doesn't work. But, you could be an appetite in Ireland for a lot of people that kind of think, well, I'll go onto Kildare website this week and see what's up and coming, and I'll buy that track for 99 cents because it doesn't bother me anyway, and the artist gets the 99 cents, stuff like that,
yeah.
where, anyway, Brian, it's a whole other conversation, all of that, to try and get into it. But I mean, at the time, the scene was very vibrant. We played in the Bag of Inn and the New Inn, and the White Horse down on the on the quays, and you could play in Ireland. You could be playing every night of the week if you wanted to. I know what you mean, and as opposed to doing a pub gig with covers for nothing. These were gigs with original artists writing their own stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a lot of it around. Everyone I knew was in a band,
I suppose when you're in the scene, it would be like
well,
that.
that's like the butcher guy. Everybody I know is a butcher. Yeah, you may find you're kind of in that scene. Maybe that's what that is. Yeah.
And one of your first major tours around Ireland, I suppose, was with the Saw Doctors. How did that come about?
Well, it actually wasn't, Brian. Before that, we did Big Country.
Right.
And we met lifelong friends on that tour. Paddy McPolan ended up being our tour manager. We met him on that tour and played at Theatre Royal. What was that? Famous Sir Henry's in Cork, and we were with Big Country, and that was an amazing time. Absolutely amazing, because we were on our high ace driving around after the boys, yay! And then, then the Saw Doctors, we went across England with them. Looking back, we did a great tour with them, and we made a lot of fans. And learned a lot about touring on that level. And basically, we didn't come back for 3 years. That's what happened. Pretty much, I know there was time off in weeks here and or the odd month there, but we pretty much toured for 3 years after that.
Jesus.
Which I'm not sure wasn't a mistake in hindsight, because you want to come back, take some time away from each other, even a week or two, then get back into the rehearsal room and see what ideas you have. It's kind of, that's how this cycle actually works.
Yeah.
We probably spent too much time touring, but we loved it.
Yeah.
Especially as a support band, you're only on half an hour a night.
True, actually. Then you get to sit back and
open the cans there, boys. Yeah.
I've always wondered back in the early days. Now, was there a thing of? I've heard stories from a few different bands. Is the main act would almost try to sabotage the support to make sure that they don't upstage them. Was that actually a thing that you encountered?
Yeah. Saw Doctors wouldn't let us have a bass drum.
Right.
So the drummer had to play with a snare. Right. Didn't bother us anyway, because to us was all about the songs, But you could imagine if that band had been a very drum led band or that kind of thing, they would have been scuppered. But it didn't really bother us. So. But yeah, they did that kind of thing. I'm not quite sure what the band's level of knowledge about all that was, but certainly that was definitely a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez.
Sadly.
It's almost like saying to the guitar.
But it was rare. I do. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Exactly. There, you can't use your amping. You only have 4 strings, but then you're a bass player, aren't you? No, but it wasn't. And it was pretty much only them. It was only confined to them. Now, I wouldn't speak bad of them. The lads are lovely, and the tour guys were lovely. And it was just a management decision, obviously. But we found it very strange. But it wasn't widespread, to answer your question.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. It's good to hear, and I think it's fair to say that in the band, you took no crap when it came to members, people joining. Was it hard to find reliable people?
No. The problem was that when you're in a band, an original band, and you have that trust and growing up in faith with all the guys you're with, that you think they can't be replaced, or you think another musician won't be the same and all that. And to the contrary, you find when you get older that playing with other musicians make you better. And they bring something different to the table, and that's what's beautiful about it, And it's not a word that can be quantified with better, or it's just different.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, you've been very lucky with the musicians that we've played with over the years. They've all been amazing, and yeah, so no, that wasn't an issue really.
Ah, I see. And then flash forward, you were supporting Bon Jovi. That must have been a point. I know you'd toured England and everything with the Saw Doctors, but Bon Jovi now,
No, no, Bon Jovi was first. That happened first, Brian, before anything else. That was an FM 104 competition, and our manager at the time just put us into the competition, and we won it to support Bon Jovi in the RDS. But sure, we loved it, and concerts that made us. That has to be it, because it's 36,000 people, and we
yeah,
just came out and just had the crack. Now, we had been gigging. We were very match fit when we did that gig. We had been gigging in pubs and clubs and everything all up and down the country, all right. But that was the first major here we are on the map. And 104 had been playing us a lot up to that point, which is, again, another bone of contention. I don't think Irish radio does that as much anymore as they used to. And is that down to that bands aren't providing radio-friendly enough material? According to whom and in what bracket? I don't know. But certainly they were instrumental in breaking us, as were 96 in Cork. And so when we kind of did that gig, it was a self-affirmation for us, and support for them and the decision they'd made to back us too. So that all worked out very well.
yeah. It must have been a point then where you thought, I know you'd won the competition, but you thought it's really starting to pay off now. This is it. We're made.
Oh yeah, I thought it was home. I was walking on the stage. The drummer was almost thrown up, and I was like, "Bring it on, man! This is where I'm going," And I remember saying after the first song, we had them all sing along with us after the first song, and I remember Paddy at the time was just saying, "I've never seen that before. I've never seen a support band do that before." But we were like, "What difference does it make for a support band?" And I inevitably would say then after the first song, "Ha! I bet you all thought we were going to be shit, didn't you?" And then you have them; they're on your side anyway, because it's just a bunch of humans in a field having some fun in it. That's what it's all about, really. So yeah, it was a turning point, certainly, and I really adored it. It was great just to be on the big stage and get the feeling of what it's like. The only difference is, I'm sure it's a different feeling again when those 36,000 people are all there to see you.
True. True.
So it's the next best thing, really.
Yeah. And I've heard many, many times that you're almost experts in crowd engagement and getting the crowd going. How did you work on that? Was it something that you were naturally good at, or did you have to actively kind of?
Well, you have to do it no matter what size your audience are. And if you spend years in pubs playing to 10, 15 people and just having great fun with them, as I said, it's the exact same thing. Once you know that when you're talking to an audience, you're talking to an individual. So it doesn't matter how big or small and the more you kind of go, is everybody having a good time? Yeah, I mean, you can do that once or twice, but after that, it's not very engaging. I mean, we came up with loads of original ideas. Used to have those cameras, those disposable cameras, and you'd wind them along and click them. And somebody had one of them in the front row. This is in Wembley Arena with 11,500 people who were supporting somebody, and I grabbed the camera, said, "Okay," and I held the camera up and said, "Right, can you not all kind of scrunch in a little bit?" And which is what your uncle would say at the wedding, but everybody loved it because it was just like, what are you talking? Before they had lights on phones and all that kind of thing. So it was something that did come naturally, I suppose, to answer your question. Yeah, and it was crafted then through years of just gigging anyway.
Yeah. And something else you guys used to do as well that you rarely, if ever, see at gigs nowadays is you'd go down to the merch booth and actually meet the fans.
We sold a lot of records that way.
Yeah.
I think, we sold 10,000 albums in 8 shows with the Corrs.
Jeez.
And for your listeners, here's a little bit of maths, right? So we had licensed our record to a label in the UK, so we had to buy the albums off them for $6.50. Right? The venue take 25% out of your tenner. That leaves you $7.50. You buy the records for $6.50, leaves you with £1. And then it costs you 15 grand to do the tour, so you lose 5 grand.
Oh man.
So welcome to the music business. The B is very important in music business. Music is all great and all that, but if you don't have the business right, and ultimately I think that's what we felt of. Our business end wasn't very good.
Yeah. Jeez. I've heard that many, many times now from the musicians I chat that there's no money in the music business.
No.
Yeah.
No. And again, as I alluded to earlier on, that's this organization is on a mission to try and sort that, because it's not right. It's not right.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that you should mention the music business and being screwed over by it, really, because last night I watched the new Elvis film, and
Oh,
he has to be like the definition of someone who was not on top of their business, you
no,
know?
no, but and at the same time had a bit of a crook looking after him, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, and that's kind of shows you how the music industry was born.
Mm,
You know, rather like the movie stars in the old days, they used to have this studio system where the studio owned the would just hire you for 500 quid a week, and then you just make as many movies as they want you to make.
yeah,
They
yeah,
employ you there, you know. That's and then when you follow that through time with George Michael and Prince putting slave on his face and changing his name and all that, and you know, because they made you sign a contract when you're 18 that you personally can't get out of for the rest of
yeah,
your life.
yeah.
There's no other industry in the world that would allow that to happen. You can't sign somebody for the rest of their lives when they're 18, you know.
Yeah, like when you think about it, when you're 18, you don't know the way the world works. You know, you're
No.
blinded by, especially when it comes to music, you're blinded by like everything they tell you. You
And
don't know
that was
what you're
part
doing.
of their sales process. They knew that.
Yeah.
Hey, what about a new Cadillac? You sign with us, we get you Cadillac, and you can, you know, be playing in front of girls. Yay! Where do I sign? So,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. I'm sure it still goes on to this day, but it's, you know, it's very important to look after the business. The business is paramount. You have a product, be in your music, and you have to learn how to sell it. Or if you don't, at least hire somebody you trust that does, like Paul
Yeah.
McGuinness. You know,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Speaking of the business, when you guys signed to Warner, you must have thought, right, we are set. Like we don't have to worry about a thing.
yeah, they brought out Sunburst, had a massive hit with that, and then they brought out All the Time in the World and dropped us. And to this day, I can't get the albums back off them in Ireland.
Still
They
now.
own they own the records and they won't give them back.
Oh
And
man.
they didn't even make them. We made them. You know. So look, as I'm saying, looking back on it now, that's why I say things like looking back and you know, there's a lot more to be thankful for than sad about.
Mm,
But in the interest of this podcast, if there are younger people listening to it coming up, you know, there's a lot of things you got to be wary of, and you got to keep your eye on. You know,
mm.
but record labels are notorious, where anyway at the time for that kind of carry on. You know, which is horrendous, really, and it's
Yeah.
exploitative, and it should be stopped. You know, which I think it is kind of more so now. I'm sure it is. I mean, the One Direction boys ended up making a good few quid, and I don't think they wrote a note in their lives. You know, so
Yeah.
that did very well. So they were obviously looked after and worked very hard, and fair play to them as well they should be.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just we thought we were set when we signed to Warner's, but there you go. You just never know.
I suppose the only saving grace nowadays, though, is that much more people have the ability to do it themselves, you know, record in their bedroom and actually put it out on apps like
Correct,
Spotify, you know?
correct. But they can't get revenue from the sales. That's the problem.
Well, true, yeah,
You know.
yeah.
So and there's plans afoot for that too. There's things can be done about that.
Mm,
You know, there's a thing called a user centric model. People could look it up though, but and basically what it would mean is that if you pay a £10 fee to Spotify, they keep £3 as their platform fee, which is fine, keeps all their shareholders happy. But the other £7, if I just listen to your record for the whole month, then you get the £7, my £7,
ah,
because the share of what I listen to was mostly you, so you get the larger share of my £7. Whereas at the moment, everybody's tenor goes into this huge pool, and whatever your song's percentage play in that pool was, that's what you get paid out of. Hence 0.000000001 cent, because the pool is
yeah,
so huge. Whereas a much simpler model would be, as I said, band comes out, they build up 10,000 fans, they make an album, they put the album out on Spotify, and their 10,000 fans pretty much listen to their album religiously for 2 or 3 weeks or a month, or the lion's share that month.
mm,
You know, they have enough money then, 30, 35 grand or whatever coming into, or more, 70 grand or whatever the percentage is, to make a new record and to keep going and to survive,
yeah,
and which ultimately should be the goal of all art, you know. And it doesn't have that handoutness, and that the way that a lot of art is being perceived now is that we all live on handouts and grants and all, because our industry is decimated,
mm.
really. So there's lots of things afoot to try and fix that.
I was reading a thing earlier on this morning, actually, that in the US, the Senate, I think it is, are really trying to force through a thing that'll totally change it. And I think they're wanting to make it for every stream you get, like
15 cent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But sure, why do you need to legislate for that?
Yeah.
And again, comes back to the business, the artists and the business are very much on opposite sides here and have opposite agendas. So it's just very, very important to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every story is a horror show. It's not, by any means. But there's a lot of it. And so, yeah, look, Sign to Warn Us, it was a great time. We enjoyed it when it happened. I mean, Sunburst was huge. They sold the ad to Centra the next week. So they made their money back in a week. But yeah, I mean, the radio play was great. I mean, it did a lot for profile, but not for the pocket.
Yeah, I get you. And the way you said, they still won't give it back to you. Is there nothing within the rights where it reverts back to you in a couple of years or a set
That's
amount of years?
Publishing does that, but not records now.
Right. So there's
so they own them. No. Well, they could just give them back if they were so inclined to do so, because it's not worth anything to them anyway, but they won't. So what I'm saying is, I suppose, just to be careful that sometimes when you sign something when you're very young, it should never be the case. I mean, even a mortgage doesn't do that. You can always sell the house and walk away, or
Yeah.
But no, it's very important to be careful of anything that you sign.
Yeah, definitely. We'll go back to your gigs. At a certain time, you were touring Europe and you were playing with the likes of Alice Cooper, and again, Meatloaf. You finally got to stand up on stage and sing one of his songs. What was that time like for the band?
That was a magical time. They were lovely. They were so lovely. His family and all of his friends, and they spoiled us rotten, and they fed us every day in catering, and it was great. It's great. I mean, if I had a choice, if I could make a living doing that 5 or 6 months a year, I'd still be doing it.
Yeah.
Just jump on the tour bus and go. It's just magical seeing different places and hanging out with a lovely team of people on the road. It can't be beaten. Yeah. It's an amazing experience. It really is.
Yeah. I'm a massive Meatloaf fan myself. I've always wondered what he was actually like, because there's so many stories you hear about him, and he seems like this incredibly intense person. I never knew whether to make up my mind of whether he'd be really nice or he'd be kind of a bit
a sweetheart, very, very self-conscious person, very shy in many ways and introverted, not as a persona but as a person. The man I met was a very, very kind, engaging, quiet man. And his family adored him and his friends adored him. He was a lovely man. He just was. And I'm sure there's a percentage of everybody who's part this and part that, but the Meatloaf act as you see it is and again, I'm not using it's an act in any disparatory way, but it's a persona that he was playing. As a person, he was just a very, very quiet, kind man. That's my memory of him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's because
I remember when he first came off the stage one night, and one of the first gigs, and I was at the side stage and I was singing everything, and he came off and I was like, "Hey mate, I loved that, man. I loved the gig. It was great." And I'm singing along. She goes, "That's great, kid. I need you singing along. I want you singing along. Sing along more. I need all the help I can get." That kind of thing. So very kind, nice man.
Yeah, and then I mentioned you were playing with Alice Cooper. What was that experience like?
Well, Alice and me were big mates. I can't profess that I met Alice that much. I probably met him in the corridor or something like that. And it was more when Meat's tour hooked up with festivals that we met up with Alice. So we weren't actually playing with him. So, it would be harder to make a connection because we were just another band on the bill in the festival. Whereas with Meat, we were touring with him and his family and his crew for months on end. So it's easier to spark up relationships that way. But by all accounts, Alice and we got very close to Meatloaf's daughter, Amanda, and her sister Pearl. We had a great time with them, and they Uncle Alice to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So by all accounts, another sweetheart. But they're Alice would be an artist and a musician, but damn good at the music end of it or the business end of it too. Like Alice Cooper was a product, and he knew how to sell it and market it, and
Yeah.
So massively successful person, massively successful.
Yeah. He, of course, had this Shep Gordon, isn't it, handles his business end of it, and he's like
Right.
this music business guru now.
Yeah.
So of course,
Yeah.
Alice made it.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, hard-working, sweet people. No bad memories of any of that at all. I've very few bad memories, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Looking back at
suppose
it now.
it's like everything, as time goes on, you kind of forget the bad and remember the good.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So no, it's overall a very pleasant experience.
Yeah. I know you mentioned earlier on that Bon Jovi was one that made you, but in your opinion, what would some of the other concerts that made you guys be?
Well, we sold out 2 nights in the Olympia with no seats, fire hazard. I forgot to put my best friend on the guest list, and he couldn't come because they said it's a fire hazard. I can't anybody else in the building. And that's how packed that was. And we had great fun at those gigs. They were brilliant. And we had a couple of great gigs in Vicar Street too. I remember we did New Year's Eve once and New Year's Day. The New Year's Day gig was gas because everybody was in tatters. The audience, the band, everybody. We were just kind of coming out. Whose idea was this? So lots of great memories and gigs wise. And then after that, after Picturehouse and stuff like that, there's been, we did a reunion but Shinebox was 21, so we did a gig in the concert hall, and we had a choir and string quartet. Now I just loved it. It was amazing. The concert hall was an amazing venue, and everybody who'd ever Pete Glenister played with us, all the band members were back, and everybody played bits and pieces from everybody who'd been in the band over the years. It was just an absolutely poignant night for me. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. I suppose when you're actually getting to that stage where, you mentioned the strings and everything, seeing your music played on that level or to that, with the orchestra sort of stuff, that must be a pretty great feeling.
It is. I have a solo record I did with Adam Freeman, who was produced Everybody Goes My Girl and Madness, Sadness, Gladness album. I did a solo album with him, and he got the Czechoslovakian Symphony Orchestra to play on two of them, 85 piece.
Jeez.
Unbelievable. I mean, you're dead right. That is a real moment in your life where you kind of think, wow, that's grown up.
Yeah, jeez. That'd be hard to top, though. It's definitely a moment in your life where
lots of things are hard to top.
Well,
yeah. That's a good. So you either go, oh well, it's all over, it's all downhill from here, or you find other things that touch you in the same way that those particular things did. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the aspirations you have as a young musician. I want to get played on the radio. I want to hear my songs sung back to me. All of that kind of carry on happened to us fairly early.
Yeah.
So within, I suppose, 2 or 3 years. Now, having said that, the original members of the band, the three of us, we signed to London Records in 1991, and we really didn't have Sunburst hit success till 98. So we were 7 years plugging along, which is a lot, It is. And we all lived in the same house as well. So we never got away from each other, So, but a lot of things happened fairly early, and that was the thing. You're striving to top them,
Yeah. Yeah. Geez, that must have been a recipe for disaster, though, spending that much time together, and living together as well.
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah. But it was easier for us because we were on the dole, and we were paying our rent together in a house when back then you could rent a house for 500 quid a month between the three of you. It was just a different time.
Yeah,
different time. It's very hard to get that kind of, well, not hard. It's impossible to do that now. But yeah, looking back, we probably shouldn't have spent as much time together as we did.
Yeah. And one for the international listeners now, I'm sure they're probably screaming at whatever device they're listening to on it. But I have to ask, I probably know the answer already, but I have to ask, being a band in Dublin at that time, coming up, getting successful, was there times when you were compared to U2, or were you sick of hearing about U2?
No, you only get that from doorman. Oh, gee, look at the amount of gear you have, lads. You two were in last week, had less gear than you, Or that kind of, are you still at the music, and that still goes on to this day. Even during the pandemic, it was very difficult for us to even explain to the government what self-employed musicians do.
Yeah.
And so, would you not have another job to fall back on? No! You would get U2 comparisons, but sure, why wouldn't you? a lot of them, they came through and had a lot of the same influences as musicians that we did at the time. We weren't that far removed from them, really, So we weren't the same kind of band, so we didn't fall foul to that a lot. But there was a lot of musicians that were kind of following in that wake. 16s on the hats and delayed guitars, and the minute you did that, you were screwed. So.
Yeah.
I do remember a lot of, you had to be conscious to not like sound like U2. So you had to make anything that sounds right U2. Now we're not doing that. No. Move along,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So you got a bit of that, but it's all harmless banter, really.
Yeah. You wouldn't.
I probably cared about it a lot more then than I do now.
I was just going to say it was probably one of them things that would ruin your day when you hear it back.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you imagine? What's the worst thing happened to you? Oh, somebody compared me to you too.
Don't even attempt to walk on stage with a pair of glasses or anything on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh. So we've heard the best. I always ask this. What would you say has been some of the worst gig experiences you've had, and how did you overcome them?
I think any big musician will say this the same as me. I think the worst thing that can happen to you is gear failure. So if you come out and you're, hey, good evening, 2, 3, 4, and your guitar doesn't work for whatever inalienable reason, that's horror. Because it's so you can't just stop and can I get this fixed, or you break a string back in the days when you had to fix them yourself, and all of that kind of thing. So gear failure was a big thing, because that would shake you. Then you're shook, and it changes the whole dynamic of the gig and everything. So I mean, honestly, that is pretty much the worst that happened. I didn't mind playing to nobody in venues. We'd done that for years. That wasn't a big issue. You can have more crack with 4 people sometimes than you can. And then you learn a lot from those gigs. Because she said, well, the way I spoke to those 4 people now, speak to 20,000 next week. Because that's the same. They're the same. Remember I said to you earlier on?
Yeah.
You have to learn that lesson. It's just 4 individuals or 20,000 individuals. All the same thing, though. And it's an important lesson to learn.
That's a good one, actually. You wouldn't think of it.
Yes, it's true. Same audience is the same, regardless of the size of it. It's only made up of individuals,
Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of it. Yeah, I don't really have one time I fell off the stage story. I'm sure I do, but it's not coming to mind. Gear failure, that's the worst. PA dies or something terrible like that. Oh, Jesus. That's why when you see big bands, they've lost so many crew and cast around them, making sure that doesn't happen, because it's everybody's worst nightmare.
Yeah. That's actually, I've noticed this. The 2 I hear most is gear failure or no crowd. A lot of bands actually that really bothers, but I suppose that'd be kind of.
Oh, it bothers you. No, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say nobody likes playing to nobody. But there's absolutely nobody there who just wouldn't play at all. What's the point? But if you're 4 or 5 people there, we used to joke there's more people in the band than there is in the audience. But you kind of, it's a paid rehearsal then, or unpaid rehearsal, but it's a rehearsal nonetheless. And as I said, there's things to be picked up and learned in every situation you're in.
Yeah.
Would I have known that's what was happening at the time? But probably not. I'd have been like, nobody got this is a pile of shit. But looking back, I was going, oh yeah, learned a lot from that. So.
And would you guys have preferred playing the big massive stages or the small or intimate gigs?
I think there's merit in both. I think there's, they're different kinds of gigs, like playing to 4 people or playing to 20,000, and everywhere in the middle. So I don't know, as a songwriter, you could end up at a house party and you're sitting on a couch, and somebody says, oh, you play that lovely song, and you're playing it, and there's 10 people at the house party all totally silent and paying attention to everything that you're doing, and you're being scrutinized because you're 2 foot away from them. Is a different experience to walking out in front of 30,000 people and knowing how to entertain them too. So there is that, and stuff to be learned from both. Like you wouldn't sit on the couch and go, come on everybody, sing along now, right? You might just say, hey, join in on this bit, guys, that. And then so somewhere in the middle you can speak to everybody in that way, so that's how I'd look at that.
Would you believe you're actually the first one now who has said both? Normally I hear even bands that have played massive arenas, I hear that they prefer the small, more intimate gigs where you're right up in people's faces. Yeah,
well, yeah, I get that, and like that, and that's what I mean about the house party scenario. I do get that. It's a different animal, and it's beautiful, and it's great. I think with a bigger audience, you just need a string of hits, and that's how you end up playing those places anyway, because it's just a gauge. But there's that constant chatter, and that can put some people off. Um, you know, but I would say both.
It's a good way to look at it, all right. And so when the music scene kind of started to change, the festivals were changing and everything. Like they were going from rock music more towards dance and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
the gigs started to dry up. How did you guys approach that? How did you handle it?
We fell apart miserably.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever happened to Picturehouse? You guys were great. Did you buy any of the records? No. And did you come to any of the gigs? No. That's what happened to Picturehouse.
Good answer.
There you go. Ran out of money. Yeah, and you're right. That's what happened. And we were victims of Britpop as well. The culture was changing a lot of the time. So I think as a band, we might have just been a bit late to that party. We caught the end of it, really. I think if we had Karmarama in 92, things might have been a lot different,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, would there be a time that you think if you had it done differently, you were out in a different time period, it would have been a lot different?
Yeah,
But,
totally. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We kind of caught the start of the demise of the business as we knew it. That's what happened there. Because we'd so many hits on the radio and all of those kind of things. But when you look back, it's definitely a shift in the tide as well. Like you say, they were going more to. Witness, prime example. The first time we played, what was Witness before? It was Witness. It was something else. Anyway, we played the original one. It was like Fela. And then the next year we played that as well, a bit less up the bill, and DJ Shack Mac, whatever. And then the third year, it was a total dance festival.
Yeah.
The bands were gone.
It's mad, really. It's mad. And
Yeah.
I'm always saying on the podcast, there needs to be, I know there is kind of, rock gigs now and guitar music gigs now, but Ireland really needs like a proper rock festival, I think, where there's just nothing but rock bands. Because I think there is a good crowd out there. I know the majority.
It's starting to come back. I think there's been a resurgence. Even the 80s festival, what's the one they do out there in Johnstown? Really successful.
The Forever Now, is it?
It's Forever Now, yeah. And, so there's an appetite. I think that's starting to come back. I was listening to a podcast with Rick Astley. He seems like a gas man, but did you see him playing with the Foo Fighters and all? Did you see that?
Yeah.
And he was just saying, he's back playing in America, touring. Like, wow, there's been a resurgence there. So, and I've noticed here, you see a lot of the festivals now in Ireland are, stunning, four of us, everybody with us, basically. So there seems to be a resurgence in those kind of festivals too, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. And looking back on your career, is there anything that you love that if you could, you'd relive? One point or one thing that happened. Is there anything you constantly kind of go back to?
Funny you should say that, because I would say the National Concert Hall gig, which is a nice thing to be able to say because it was only 2 years ago. But I enjoyed that so much I couldn't tell you, because I wasn't thinking about anything else. But aren't these songs great? And to me, I was as removed from them at that point as the audience was, so we all kind of relived them together.
Yeah.
I wasn't sitting going, oh yes, I wrote this, and at the time I can't even remember, right? Well, who knows? They're just great songs, and don't they sound great? So I have to say, and I think that's a very positive thing to be able to say, really, from in the business as long as I am, that I think that gig in the concert hall was a major pinnacle for me, and I'd happily go and relive that night again.
I wouldn't blame you. It's a pretty special moment now. But at this point in your career, you've achieved so much. You've seen the highs, you've seen the lows. At this point, what do you dream about? What do you want to achieve?
I think recognition as a songwriter. I've a great songwriting partner, Jan O'Brien, and we can write songs in every genre, and anything from West End shows to pop hits, that kind of thing. And I think like an Ivor Novello would be lovely. To have some song that touched everybody. and somebody say, "Did you write that?" Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, there. I think that's brilliant. So I think that's what it's at now, rather than from a gigging or playing point of view. I think the songwriting would be, to be recognised for that would be great.
Yeah, actually. Really would. You
Yeah.
wouldn't go back to trying to reform the band and try go back to the glory days. So
Are you mad? No, we're doing our last ever show on the 22nd of September.
I was keeping it for the end to say, but that's
Yeah.
not the last ever one, is it?
It is, yeah. It'll be the last one, yeah.
Are you sure now it's not going to be like 5 years' time? This is the last one. You know, all them bands to keep doing like
You can't. We're too old for 5 years' time. What are you talking about? 5 years' time, we'll all be in wheelchairs.
Look at the Rolling Stones. They're in their late 70s.
I
They can
know
do
they
it.
are. Yeah, fair play to them. Yeah. Oh God, another guy died. Get him off the stage. But no. People are too busy. The lives are. Even trying to get everybody together for rehearsal is a nightmare. So I'd rather just put it to bed on a high than to go through the stress of doing another show again. It's just stressful when they're one-offs. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah, I
they're
get you.
one-off shows, and you have to rehearse for them, and you're not really match fit, and it's a lot more stress. It's stressful.
Yeah, I could imagine. And right, you're putting Picturehouse to bed. So, what are your future plans?
I have a successful wedding band business now. I concentrate a lot on that. I enjoy playing. Sold out every night. and you can make a living doing it, and I'm just concentrating on that. I am starting to write some new stuff now, but I don't think it holds the same kind of enchantment like as it used to. So there's kind of there is an element of what's the point. What is the point? And Ceol Éireann, that's the other thing I have to say. I really want to change the future in this country for people coming up behind me. I want to leave it better than I found it. And there are issues in Ireland. I mean, we don't have a representative body for the music industry in Ireland, like the film board. The film board is a statutory organisation that concentrates around tax breaks and getting investment in for filmmaking. On a proper scale, we don't have that for music here.
That's crazy. You'd
Isn't
assume
that crazy?
we would like.
You'd assume that we would hey, we punch way above our weight, like our whiskey industry or like our tourism. The IDA would give people money to come set up businesses here, and yet we don't seem to have any coherent organisation to export our music to the world.
And
Crazy.
It's such a massive part of our culture.
I know. So that's what I'm working on now, and that'll be if I do have a legacy to leave, it hopefully will be that. But it's very hard. It's like everything else in Ireland. It's very hard to kind of get the right people on board at the right time and figure out that Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
As one move leads to another and all of that kind of thing. But it's not something that has a finite timeline for me. I'm just going to keep going till something happens with it, But I think it's a very important thing that we should have a functioning music industry in Ireland, and we don't.
Yeah, definitely. But imagine it's the type of thing, once one guy is kind of working on it, trying to change it, surely every other musician in the industry would be like, yeah, I want to help with that, and they'd jump on board.
Yeah, very well may do, but you have to get it to a point in which people go, oh, okay, I can see what this is now. So we're at the block building stage, which is fine. But we haven't gotten any doors slammed in our face, really, and anybody that does just doesn't have the time really to help it out. But it's everybody agrees, so it's just a question of, as we say, getting the foundation right, and then we can build upon that. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, I'll look forward to seeing what you do with it, and we'll get on to the last couple of questions then. I always ask these, so you can't get off the podcast till you answer, I'm afraid.
Okay.
If you could see any performer or artist from history, concert for one night only, who would it be?
Now, I've answered this question myself countless times. You ever asked that question now? Remember it now. I suppose it would be Glen Campbell.
Right.
Glen did an amazing gig with the BBC Symphony Orchestra back in the 70s, and I just thought it was the most fantastic thing I'd ever seen. Glen Glenn Campbell. Yeah.
Good one. Good one. Not one I've had before.
Oh, amazing guitar player, amazing singer. The songs are incredible. You just be there all night, like, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say the CEO, you know, obviously Paul, but I've seen him twice, so that memory has happened, and you know, if the chances are I'll go and see him again when he's back on the next tour. But if there was anybody out of history, and it doesn't matter that he happens to be dead, but I would definitely, yeah, Glenn, brilliant.
Yeah. Be definitely a good one to see anyway. And if you could spend 24 hours locked inside a room with any performer or artist from history, who would it be?
Now, does it have to be music?
Usually, but I'll make an exception.
Oh, Marlon Brando.
Right.
I'd say you'd have such crack with Brando because his friends that knew him, he'd ring you up. He affectionately called himself Bran Flakes. You know, hey, it's Bran Flakes. What are you up to? You know, he was meant to be just hilarious crack if you knew him and got on with him. You know, yeah. And from a music perspective, you see, you'd be kind of going through your mind and thinking, oh, jeez, what if I met him now and he turned out to be an arsehole? You know, be ruined. And then somebody that would have to be engaging enough to kind of hang out with. I'd say Elton would be great crack to be locked in the room with for 24 hours.
Yeah, actually.
You know,
definitely.
Once he knew he was getting out and didn't have to throw a tantrum, I think he'd be grand. But I think Elton would have some amazing stories and tales to tell you. You know, Tom Jones being alone. Tom, I was lucky enough to have 4 or 5 hours on a couch with Tom one night. Met through a mutual friend, and because we'd met through a mutual friend, he knew I was all right, and so we just chatted like he's just Tom from Wales, honest to God, and he talks to you like that. You wouldn't believe what happened to me when I went to Vegas first. You know what I mean? Like, and he's telling you this. He said, "Can you believe it? Can you believe that happened to me?" And I was like, "No, Tom." He's like, "Who has these memories?" You know?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So yeah, Elton Jones.
I suppose at this point I should ask. I mentioned it at the beginning, but how did it come about that he bought a box of your CDs?
I don't know. I think he heard us, or he was at one of the shows, and he had heard a song played on the radio, and he was he was famous for doing that anyway, and he really liked the music. Now, he probably sent somebody from his office down there, buy me 10 of them, and then he sent it out to, which is an amazing thing for somebody to do, really.
Yeah.
But I genuinely feel he does that because he just liked the music. He said, "Wait to hear these songs, they're great."
Yeah.
As opposed to help these guys out or do something for them, or,
Yeah.
And I suppose he gets Spotify playlists now and just emails them to his pals. That's what he would do now.
Probably, actually, yeah. Much simpler.
Yeah.
And less money for the other band.
There you go. And the conversation goes round in circles.
Yeah. And if there was a song that could appear on the soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
Well, Here, There and Everywhere was my favourite song for years. I thought it was the most perfectly written pop song I'd ever heard. And then, like, to be songs like, classical piece of music called Cavalleria Rusticana. It's made famous from the last scene of The Godfather 3. But it's absolutely stunning piece of music. So, yeah, that would be number one at the moment.
Good choice. I don't think I've had a classical piece mentioned for that answer yet. So it's I'll have to. Of course, I've seen the Godfather part 3, but that music doesn't stick out to me. I'll have to.
It's the scene at the end.
Yeah, when he's on the steps.
Yeah. And when he's in the chair right at the end, it's that music.
Yeah. And the final question: is there something I should have asked you?
That's a great question. No, there isn't. But I do love that as the last question. That's great. Where did I make a mess of this interview? Yeah, no, nothing is all left out. It kind of covers it all, really.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love throwing that one in because it really catches people off guard.
That's a really good one, bro. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
Right. Well, Dave, it's definitely been an experience. It's been one I've actually had Picturehouse in my head since I started the podcast, and I'm delighted I finally got to do it.
Well, thanks for thinking of us, Brian. I appreciate it. It's been very nice talking to you.
As long take her into town. The neck's snapping as the heads turn around. But I don't mind, 'cause this happens to me every time. And I don't care, 'cause this happens to me everywhere. Everybody loves my girl, and I know that there's no one like her in the world. Everybody loves my girl, I'm just happy I'm the one who found her first. Feels so good, just like I always knew that it would. It may not be right, but I feel luckier than every other guy. And I'm aware, I see the way that everybody stares. And I get down when I imagine ascending in the clouds. Everybody loves my girl, and I know that there's no one like her in the world. Everybody loves my girl, I'm just happy I'm the one who found her first. I guess I was the last in a long and sordid past. I was wondering why she knew the name of every other guy. She's had me, just like a trick up the wizard's sleeve. She's had them over and over and over again. Everybody's had my girl, she must have been with every guy in the world. Everybody's had my girl, and I'm sorry I'm the one who found out first. Everybody's had my girl, she must have been with every guy in the world. Everybody's had my girl, and I'm sorry I'm the one who found out first.
Why, hello there. I'm about to make a prediction. And that prediction is, you like podcasts. If that's true, then make your way over to the Cognitive Discourse, where we have monologues, short stories, and open discussions. And every now and then I get a little ranty. If this sounds like something you're interested in, then go check us out. We're streaming on all major platforms, and hell, we're even on YouTube. New episodes out every Friday. I hope to see you there.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. And if you're interested in signing up to Band Builder Academy, use the link in the show notes below and enter the code CONCERTS and you'll receive 10% off. So, until next time, keep rocking. Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show's over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here.